a Pizza Hut uniform is racing across Midtown to bring us a pepperoni lover's big pie.
But at this hour, do you think it could be a private contractor? Because is it hard to get a uniform at this hour?
It is hard to get a pizza this hour, so occasionally we will bring in food. Last week we tried to order pizza because it was Staff Appreciation Day. I could not find a pizza place on Seamless, which is this food ordering service here in New York. I could not find a pizza place that was open. I'm like, this is the city that doesn't sleep. So I am so glad you have the tennis shoes.
I know. It's called the pie top. You're going to see the pizza.
The shoe. Where's the shoe?
Right. Instead of the high top, it's called the pie top.
We put it over there just so that the crew wouldn't order a bunch of pies.
I think you should wear them for the rest of the show, too, Brian.
All right.
Just saying.
All right. Meanwhile, let's talk a little bit about this. Friday night, the Attorney General for the United States, Jeff Sessions, fired all of the remaining U.S. attorneys across the country. I say all of the remaining.
He didn't really fire. He asked for resignations. 46 resignations.
Ultimately, they got rid of all of them. I said there are only 46 left. That's because out of the close to 100, half of them already knew with the new administration, you know what, our time is limited, let's find new jobs. Right. So there were only about 50 left, and apparently Brett Barrera, the U.S. Attorney for Southern District of New York City, didn't want to resign, and so got fired.
Yeah, so he said, well, Donald Trump already told me I can stay. So the next day, they made it clear he got a call, he was out, they tweeted out how great how appreciative he was at having his job and what he's done. Now, he's accomplished a lot. He's a high-profile guy. Remember, Rudy Giuliani really got his name that way. Remember, Governor Chris Christie made his name as a U.S. attorney over in New Jersey. So a lot of people think he's going into politics. Bottom line, he didn't want to back down because he's in the middle of multiple investigations, one on our terrible Mayor de Blasio. The other one, he got rid of Sheldon Silver, a Democrat who's as corrupt as the day is long, and the Republican, too. We put them both in jail. One's heading to jail, the other one's going to jail. So they pointed out his successes, but bottom line is he's a Democrat. He worked for Senator Schumer, and he also donated to President Obama. So that makes, if you're looking to set up loyalists, and you've been stabbed in the back already by multiple people in the previous administration, as you go to take over, it's only logical that the President of the United States drains the swamp.
If you watch the mainstream media, they're all saying, you know, this was done so abruptly. Well, guess what? Every other administration has done this, too. They've all wiped out whoever is supporting them because you have your little family and you want people that work for you to be loyal. It makes sense, right? You know when you're getting one of these positions that you're probably going to lose the job if someone from the opposing party is elected. Right. Bill Clinton, he let go of 90 individuals, 90 people, including Jeff Sessions. And then this guy, the Prick guy, he also has said, you know, if you watch mainstream media, I was watching it this morning, they're all saying, but the president promised him he wasn't going to lose his job. He's saying, the Prick guy, president hasn't said that. The Prick guy says back in November, I can't remember his last name. Okay. Back in November, I was at Trump Tower. I was meeting with him. He said that I could keep my job for the time being. Well, guess what? He did. You know, he kept it for a few months. 5 months.
Sure. So the hypocrisy is crazy because Janet Reno, Eric Holder, they both did exactly the same thing. Elizabeth Warren tweeted out weeks ago, Donald Trump promised to keep Brett Barrera as the prosecutor in Manhattan. Yesterday, he was fired. Why? And the media has said, you know, they're not looking at the hypocrisy. They're just trying to damage Donald Trump as he's doing something crazy that's never been done before, even though it's been done before. Watch.
Breaking news surrounding a sudden order for 46 U.S. attorneys to resign. The abruptness makes this stand out.
The abrupt order on a Friday afternoon after promises were apparently given amidst everything else that's going on at the Trump Justice Department.
It's very unusual. I can't ever remember seeing a case like this.
We had David Brody on from Christian Broadcasting. He had this observation. Watch this.
A quick Google search, and there's a thing called Google. Type in Janet Reno and U.S. attorneys. Type in Eric Holder and U.S. attorneys. Folks, we know this has happened before, and yet the media is up in arms. Look, I think there's a larger narrative here, and that is that the media looking for anything to, in essence, try and, quote, get Donald Trump. It's been a game of gotcha since the very beginning.
Okay, so he said Google. What happened in 1993 with Janet Reno? We did. We came up with this coverage. Here's CNN.
Janet Reno fired every holdover Republican U.S. attorney all across the country.
I have asked for their resignations at the request of the president.
All 93 U.S. attorneys. A one-day clean sweep.
Well, that was then. It sounds like they were playing this on a Victrola, and we're watching on Kinescope. That was 1993. Why does it sound so bad? Right?
It's YouTube.
This happens every administration, so it's not a news story. It's not something new and big.
Hypocrisy. Janet Reno did it. Eric Holder did it. Jeff Sessions did it. And yet, when you look at the coverage, the hypocrisy is startling.
Of course, President Trump doesn't want him working in his administration, because if you look at who this guy is, he donated to Obama's inauguration, rumored to replace Eric Holder, rumored as the AG in Hillary Clinton's administration, or was up for the job, protege of Chuck Schumer, and after the Bush administration.
But I would say this. He also, as I mentioned before, he's trying to fix New York. He went after Democrats. He got rid of eight corrupt officials around Governor Cuomo, and who knows where that investigation was heading. And the New York Post, which I believe works here, because I see a lot of people with things stained hands on the 5th floor, they said, we recommend to President Trump that he stick around. Regardless, he decided to let go of all. Sure.
Well, you know, the president is the one who makes that decision. And I'm not saying that this guy's a good guy or a bad guy, or he didn't do this or didn't do that. The thing is, he's a Democrat. So do you expect Donald Trump to keep him on?
Well,
it's never happened before.
Donald Trump must have seen this as an all or nothing, asked for the resignations of everybody. And at least in his case, apparently, he said, I'm not going to quit. And so they wound up firing him. Somebody who knows all about him is Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh wound up being prosecuted by this guy. So we're going to talk to him about what happened to the U.S. Attorney for New York coming up shortly.
So let's talk about, let's talk about what's happening. The CBO is likely to score the plan put forward towards by Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House. Now, they got their hands full passing it through the House, and they're certainly going to have a challenge as they mark it up in the Senate. However, the CBO coming out with the score is going to be significant. But the Republicans are bracing everyone to say, listen, when it comes to coverage and when it comes to prices, they were way off on Obamacare, so don't look at them as the gospel, although the person heading up the CBO was put there by President Bush 43. Here's Bernie Sanders, because he likes talking.
It is an absolute disaster. It is a disgrace. And by the way, this really has nothing to do with health care. What this has everything to do with is a massive shift of wealth from working people and middle-income people to the very richest people in this country. In my view, and what the American people want, is an improvement on Obamacare, not the decimation of Obamacare, and putting so many people off of health insurance and raising premiums substantially.
All right. Well, that socialist plan didn't work. It was way too expensive. People were waiting a long time to get into their doctors. They couldn't keep their doctors. It was collapsing. The country couldn't afford it.
So when you talk about a CBO and the score, I'm not saying these people there aren't great people working very hard for very little money. That seems to be the fact. However, as when you talk about with the CBO scoring things, remember how they got it wrong? Maybe it wasn't their fault. Jonathan Gruber made it clear back in 2009 that they put this thing together to throw off the CBO. Listen.
Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever. But basically, that was really, really critical to getting the thing to pass.
So they tried to keep as many details from the CBO as possible, and ultimately the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, estimated 8 million more Americans would wind up on Obamacare than did, which just goes to show while they put their heart into it, sometimes they get it really wrong.
After it all passed, then that soundbite comes out, and he says, don't be transparent. The American people are stupid. Don't call them taxes. Call them mandates, and it will pass with the CBO.
And he was the architect.
Yeah, and this is the quote. If CBO scored the mandate as taxes, which, by the way, it was, Bill would have died. So they changed it, made it a mandate. So then the CBO
Why didn't the CBO pick up on that? That's my question.
Because the administration told him it wasn't a tax. But then John Roberts at the U.S. Supreme Court, the Chief Justice, said it was a tax and saved it.
All right.
But that's history.
All right.
And now we're moving on to the new and improved American Health Care Act.
Right. Now it's up to Republicans to see if they can agree with Republicans. Hey, Heather.
Hello.
Good morning.
Did you hear there's a storm headed our way?
Big one.
We've heard it,
Pretty big one. So we're going to talk about that right now. The extreme weather that we've been discussing all morning, the Northeast bracing for a blizzard as millions of Americans prepare for plunging temperatures, fierce wind gusts, and up to 2 feet of snow. Some brand new video. This is out of Chicago showing slick roads, low visibility. Right now, the storm is pushing through the Midwest before merging with another system off the East Coast. Well, protests erupting in Ferguson, Missouri overnight. Look at this video. It's from this Michael Brown documentary suggesting that he did not rob a convenience store. Instead, the filmmaker behind Stranger Fruit claims that the surveillance video shows Brown was involved in a drug deal with employees. But a lawyer for the market says that it was edited and he will release the full version today. Brown was shot and killed by a white police officer back in 2014, sparking days of protest in Ferguson. And just hours from now, the man arrested for jumping the White House fence will face a federal judge. 26-year-old Jonathan Tran coming within feet of actually getting inside before he was finally stopped Friday night. The Secret Service says that he was armed with mace and had a letter for the president. Tran telling them that he was a friend and that he had an appointment. He faces up to 10 years in prison if convicted. And environmental activists leaving their mark on one of President Trump's golf courses. Look at what they did. The brazen group of vandals breaking into the $250 million Trump National Golf Course in California, carving 6-foot-tall letters into the 5th green with the message, you can't see it right now, but it said, "No more tigers, no more woods." The disgusting damage now covered with tarps. The LA County Sheriff is investigating, so we'll keep you updated on that one, too.
What did that mean? No more tigers, no more woods.
I don't even know what it means.
Well, it's a play off Tiger Woods and environmental, you know, his environmental policies, Tiger and Woods, right?
No,
That's what I'm guessing.
I don't have any idea what it means.
I was hoping you knew.
Yeah, because I read that too and I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, vandalism.
Okay.
Meanwhile, how are people changing their gender on their birth certificate without getting surgery? The loophole that's allowing them to do that coming up.
Make an X in a different box, maybe? Plus, Obamacare wiretapping and the U.S. Attorney firings. We're covering the big stories with Kellyanne Conway when she joins us on the couch that curves. Straight ahead.
Fox News Channel on Sirius XM. Your favorite shows on Channel 114. Plus every story every 15 minutes. Fox News headlines 24/7. Channel 115.
It is my judgment.
Dinesh D'Souza was sentenced on Tuesday to spend 8 months in a confinement center.
It all began when the Obama administration tried to shut me up.
Remember when filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza was convicted of election fraud? Well, it was ousted U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara who spearheaded Mr. D'Souza's prosecution. So it wasn't a surprise when D'Souza tweeted simply, "Good riddance" to the outgoing prosecutor.
All right, here to tell his side of the story and new detail on the case is filmmaker and convicted felon Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, must be a great day for you. I can imagine the feeling if someone put me in jail for 8 months and all of a sudden they were now ousted. However, you now can tell us something that you were never able to say before about your case.
Well, a congressional oversight committee has been trying to get a copy of my case file now for well over a year, and Bharara's office as well as the Obama administration have been blocking it, basically saying this is an ongoing case. But of course, my case ended in 2014. So finally, Congress now has the case file. And it's very interesting because it kind of is a revealing window into Bharara's way of doing business. The first thing that's highlighted inside the case file is I'm a conservative. I'm a prominent critic of the Obama administration. Now, this should be completely irrelevant in the decision about whether to prosecute me. It should be beside the point. But of course, in Bharara's case, it was the point. So there's evidence in this case file, and there's a lot more, that this was a political prosecution conducted by Bharara as a henchman for the Obama administration.
Who is Preet Bharara?
He's a ruthless and a very deceitful guy. The proof of this is that when he was trying to convince a judge to lock me up, to put me in federal prison. Now, remember, no American has ever been prosecuted, let alone locked up for doing what I did. So how could Bharara succeed in convincing a judge? Well, he took a series of cases, all involving corruption, and altered the facts of those cases to conceal the corruption, to try to con the judge into sending me to federal prison. It didn't really work, but it's a kind of window into the soul of Preet Bharara, kind of deceitful man that he is.
And Dinesh, what do you make of the media outrage that he was abruptly fired, even though, you know, Janet Reno, Eric Holder, they all did the same thing?
Yeah, I think this is a kind of grandstanding that Bharara has come to specialize in. He's a media darling because he kind of plays to all this, and he's kind of acting like he's some sort of a martyr. But of course, presidents have a right to appoint their own guys. And so for me, this is actually kind of nice. When I was in confinement, Bharara was laughing. Now that he's unemployed, I'm kind of laughing.
Right. Well, yeah, we'll see what happens. Dinesh, very interesting. And by the way, if you want to get Dinesh D'Souza's movies that put him in jail, because it can't the Obama administration so much, many believe, go out and get it. Dinesh D'Souza, thanks so much.
Thanks, Dinesh.
My pleasure.
All right. Straight ahead on this Monday, no surprise, Bernie Sanders blasting the Republicans' health care replacement plan.
It is an absolute disaster. It is a disgrace. And by the way, this really has nothing to do with health care.
Really? Kellyanne Conway here to respond about 10 minutes from now.
And does thinking about work keep you up at night? Well, you're not alone. Christy Wright from Ramsey Solutions is here now with how to get your job off your mind and still get ahead at the office.
This program is brought to you by Orkin. Pest control down to a science. Visit Orkin.com.
Well, because Madness is kicking off. About 30 minutes or so ago, we used a new Pie Top app where you can actually order pizza on your high top shoes.
Did it work? Did it work?
Yes.
It worked.
Absolutely.
How do we know? The pizza arrived. We're having pizza for breakfast. Thank you,
Wow.
Pizza Hut,
We're
lady.
looking live at our pepperoni.
Take that, 7-Eleven. Pizza Hut never closes.
Brian, do you have some tip money?
Yeah.
How great is this?
All right.
Can you? I don't know.
Oh, look at that. How good does that
Take my credit card.
Delicious.
There you go. There you go. Take my credit card. See you later.
Delicious. Christy, you came at the right day. We have Christy right here from Ramsey Solutions.
Speaking of the right day.
That's right. That's right.
Pizza?
Do you mind if we eat while we talk?
Please do. Please go ahead.
No, we're not going to eat when you talk. That is
We're-
rude.
is that- all right, we won't
That's why
talk.
we
We'll let you
invented
talk.
commercials. All right, so here, we brought you in because sometimes people, when they're going to bed, they're just thinking about work. What do I have to do tomorrow? What did I do today? Who's out to get me? All that stuff.
Right.
How do you turn off the voices in your head? Christy Wright from Ramsey
Yes.
Solutions joins us live.
Well, there are a few things that you can do. Really, it starts during your day. So you can maximize the productivity in your day by time blocking. This creates focus. Now, this is the opposite of multitasking, where you're giving incredible focus to one thing at a time. As a result, you get more momentum, more focus, and you get more done during the day. So you can go.
Here's the problem for like working moms.
Right.
We put our kids to sleep, and then you have to go to bed pretty early, especially when you work an early shift.
Right.
So you have like an hour to yourself.
Right.
It's so hard to turn the TV off, to turn the lights off. You want a glass of wine, you want to wind down, and you can feel the pressure of the clock ticking because you know you need to be in bed, and that stresses you out even more.
Right. It's interesting. Most Americans lay down and get ready for bed by looking at their phone. And y'all, I'm so bad about this. What happens is when you're looking at your phone or a screen, you're checking email, your brain is in working mode. So when you close your eyes, your brain is still in working mode. Right. So instead, wind down by reading a good book, talking with your spouse, doing something relaxed.
You say set boundaries. Quick way to set boundaries?
Yeah, you just want to be present wherever you are. So it's really tough when we're distracted in multiple areas. And when you're connected with technology 24/7, it's hard. Wherever you are, be there. So when you're at work, bust it and make a difference. When you're at home, put your phone down, look your kids in the eye, and be present at home.
And you notice when people say such and such has charisma, they have focus, that's because they are able to do that.
Right.
They look you in the eye and you say, wow, that person really is paying attention. And that's what they say about Trump.
Absolutely.
And changing your attitude is a good thing, too. Because you want to be positive. And if you can take a nap, I would recommend that.
Well,
that's a good
It's not a bedtime.
Right. Here's why. When you're trying to remember everything, your brain is working so hard. So it's kind of like when you go to the grocery store and you just expect to remember everything. You never do. But if you write a list, your brain can relax because the list is going to do the work for you. You can depend on it to hold you accountable.
That is so
Same
true.
thing with your task during the day. Write it down and capture it, and then your brain can shut down and get ready for
If you
sleep.
don't have a pen and pencil, I've discovered this. There's a note section in your phone.
Save everything on the phone.
And then you can set a timer. So I can set it at 10 o'clock after the show and call this person, call that person. It's so easy.
It is. It's a great tip to help.
Also, be intentional about what you put in your mind before bed.
Yeah,
so in other words, you edit what you think about.
Yeah, it's putting that phone down and having a different nighttime routine that's more relaxing. So whether that's snuggling with your kids or talking with your spouse about the day. You know, with kids, it's hard to connect with your spouse. You're just passing each other a lot of times doing the business of life. But you can connect.
Have you perfected this?
No, I haven't. It's a daily struggle. It's a daily struggle that I'm walking out every single day.
And would you say leave the television on or off?
You know, you can watch it for a period of time, but certainly right before bed, turn it off. Because anything creating your brain working really hard, you want to make sure that you're starting to relax and wind down.
Just make sure if you're watching Sean Hannity, you don't change the channel. When you wake up, we want you watching
Hey,
us.
if it gets you thinking, that brain's going to be working. So yeah, there's nighttime activities that wind down.
All right. Excellent segment. Would you like a piece of pizza?
Oh, you know, I'm good. Thank you so much.
All right.
Wow, she is disciplined.
Well, I can't get any. Kellyanne Conway, we're going to ask. She's next on Fox and Friends. We'll see if she would like a pizza. Plus, she's going to talk about the news of the day coming up.
Let's see if she was able to.
Come on in.
She's only trying to help run a country.
Comfort food.
I don't take nobody's advice. Move it all over. Won't you rock it all over? Move a little dog, a big bad dog. Move it. Listen to me, dog, before you start to whine. That's yours.
Kevin, meet your father.
Look who's here. Kellyanne Conway, special advisor to President Trump, joins us live on the Kirby Couch, not in D.C. today. How are you?
D.C. soon.
Yeah, 53 days in.
Yes.
What does it feel like?
Well, I always count the Trump administration days in dog years. 7 days for everyone, only because the president is constantly acting and making good on his campaign promises. You see, the stock market loves his candidacy. Job creators love his presidency. Job creators love his presidency. We have 235,000 new jobs created, many of them in manufacturing, in construction, in mining, less than 5% unemployment rate. And you already see the impact of his presidency.
What I would love is the two numbers. I want the normal 4.7% of the people in there, but the other number matters too. The people who are just out of the workforce and not counted. And let's just try to work on both those numbers. Would there be a political issue with that?
The president is working on both of those numbers, Brian, and I think the consumer confidence you see, the economic optimism where, yes, jobs are being created, but people also just feel better. People are spending their money. There's consumer confidence. And also, when you repeal and replace something as draconian as Obamacare, you're going to unleash more economic prosperity because people, through these tax credits, who don't get employer-sponsored or Medicaid-sponsored health insurance will have the opportunity, the choices, the competition to buy across state lines and get affordable care. You know, right now, some people in this country have an insurance card and literally can't use it.
Yeah.
They can't afford to pay the premiums or the deductibles. You have 5 states and 1,021 counties right now where you only have one choice. One choice is not a choice at all.
CBS report comes out today. You had Bernie Sanders on. Well, you had Democrats and Republicans on all the Sunday shows over the weekend. You had Democrats like Bernie Sanders saying it's ridiculous, insanity. Listen to what he said.
It is an absolute disaster. It is a disgrace. And by the way, this really has nothing to do with health care. What this has everything to do with is a massive shift of wealth from working people and middle-income people to the very richest people in this country. In my view, and what the American people want is an improvement on Obamacare, not the decimation of Obamacare and throwing so many people off health insurance and raising premiums substantially.
I'm confused because when Obamacare went into effect, suddenly a lot of people who had been buying health insurance couldn't afford it.
They couldn't afford it anymore, and that was one of the big lies, along with if you like your plan, keep your plan. If you like your doctor, keep your doctor. But look, Bernie Sanders ran on single payer, and he lost. Hillary Clinton ran defending Obamacare, and she lost. People want something different. They don't think plugging the holes and patching it up is enough. You need fundamental reform. That's why with health savings accounts, you're in better control of your health spending. We're going to give these governors more flexibility in the way Medicaid dollars are spent. Those closest to the people in need will be able to administer it. And you're going to have, when he says a shift from middle class and the workers, that's absolutely false, because what we're trying to do in our repeal and replace strategy here through the American Health Care Act is to take those farmers, those mechanics, those small business owners who currently can't access and afford care to be able to do that by pooling together in one place of these associated plans. That's prong 3 of the
phase 3, but the phase 3 is 60 votes in the Senate. So that's going to be the biggest challenge, and that is also where you get insurance across state lines.
Yes.
So that's going to take some willing and dealing. Tell me, Kellyanne, the one thing I remember the first time you came out and you said when Mitt Romney was going to be the next Secretary of State, it was up there. You came out and said, I'm not comfortable with that. And a lot of people said, oh, wait a second, is the president-elect comfortable with you saying that? Having said that, from what you've observed, have you seen that the president has the ability to do what he does best, and that's negotiate? So you have Elijah Cummings who says, he's talking to me about bringing the price of big pharma down. Yes. You have Rand Paul saying, I talked to him, and the president wants to deal. But there's a sense that Paul Ryan doesn't want to deal. Is the president going to get his way on that and say, okay, this is the Ryan plan. I also listen to others talk, and I'm going to factor some of this in.
The president and the vice president have leaned into this legislation, and the president did what leaders do this week. He listened, he's negotiating, but he's also the ultimate decision-maker and deal-maker. Well, what the president has said is if you have good improvements to the bill, let's hear them. And just this past week, Brian, he had leaders of the grassroots movement in who represent millions of people who are concerned about health care. He had 35 of the whips in. Vice President Pence was up on Capitol Hill at a lunch with the Republican senators talking about health care. The president had dinner with
Senator Ted Cruz. He's talked to Senator Paul on the phone. He's working the phones. He's meeting with people in person.
No, I know.
And I think legislation, as President Trump, is really a great sweet spot for him because so far everything has been executive in nature. But this being the first big piece of legislation under his presidency, it's appropriate that he's doing what leaders do. He's listening, he's negotiating, he's receiving many different inputs, but everybody knows, as is always the case, President Trump is the ultimate deal maker, but he's also the ultimate decision maker.
Sheryl Sandberg would be happy. You said he's leaning in. Did you read her book? It's really good.
But this is the ultimate spark plug, though, for all of his plans, because you got to pass this first, and then comes tax reform, infrastructure.
All the education reforms he's talked about, and the budget will be presented this Thursday too. You have $54 billion in defense spending. We need a stronger military. We've been under-investing in our military, and there's an additional $30 billion.
Gosh, I'll agree with that.
There is, so John McCain, when he says $54 billion isn't enough, he should keep in mind there's a $30 billion supplemental coming in?
There is, and there's additional funding for border control, and there's additional funding for veterans. But anyway, we have just underinvested in our military, and this is something that the president promised out on the campaign trail, that he would never forget our veterans, our military. He talks about them being demoralized, underfunded, demoralized, and really just people who need equipment and resources to do their jobs.
You know what's interesting is if this is an opportunity for Republicans, because you work for a deal maker, and if the House and Senate go Democrat, he's going to do deals with Democrats. So it's up to Republicans to do something that he can work with, because he's going to be there 4 years, and these Republicans aren't if they're not productive.
So the president would like to have a Republican House and Senate. We're very happy that the voters said the excuse of divided government is over. We actually want somebody who's going to solve problems and give him Republican House and Senate. Frankly, Republican state legislatures and Republican governors also, largely in Republican control. I think that's called causation, not coincidence, that people want problems solved. You have in the White House a disruptor or an entrenched bureaucracy who went to Washington owing no one anything, and who in these first 53 days has made good on a number of promises, not least of which draining the swamp, but also being able to effectuate solutions, not just talk about them. You know, people are great talkers, but he's been a man of action, and I think you see this most specifically in the repeal and replace.
You talk about draining the swamp. Yesterday, or over the weekend at least, he asked for 46 resignations. One of them refused, and that was this prosecutor for the southern part of New York. He refused, and so he was fired. Mainstream media had a heyday with us, said that this was abnormal, yet other administrations have done this in the past. What's your reaction, or what's the president's reaction?
This is just not a news story. It's a lot of noise, not much news, because it's very uniform and it's very common for presidents to ask for the resignations of political appointees like ambassadors and like U.S. attorneys. The past few presidents have done this, and we made it uniform. The president made it uniform so that there were no carve-outs. There was no special treatment. The only two people who, well, are kind of exempted, if you will, people who are having a different role in the administration, Mr. Rosenstein and Dana, who's the acting deputy attorney general. But other than that, it's uniform across the board.
Well, what about the fact that apparently this fellow went in and talked to Donald Trump, I think it was in November, and then came out and said, yeah, it looks like I'm going to be on for a while.
Pre-Pahara.
That's the way he expressed it, but the fact is that this is just what this is what presidents do routinely. I don't think it's a big news story.
The mainstream media is saying, well, maybe the president changed his mind, or maybe Mr. Barrera simply didn't understand what was being talked about.
The commonality and the uniformity of the resignation is the key here.
Why is the president going to Nashville?
The president's going to Nashville to take his case directly to the people with respect to particularly repeal and replace. And he also will be talking about other pieces of his agenda. He'll be talking about the incredible job growth, job creation, the low unemployment rate, the fact that you have many different industries responding to his presidency in these early days, Brian, by committing to not bring jobs to Mexico, by committing to expand, attract, retain a great American workforce, and also to expand here on our soil and not go abroad. You see investment, energy investment. We're talking about infrastructure. By the time he gets there, the budget will be almost completed. Tax reform.
That's going to be this week, right? We're going to see his budget.
Another busy week for him. And the fact is that he'll go out there and he'll bring his case directly to the people. I mean, he needs to cut the noise and the silence. He is our best spokesperson by far. And the noise and the silence of the news, sometimes they don't want to cover anything at all what he's doing. That's the silence. And then there's noise, things that are either misinterpreted or undercovered or frankly just unfairly covered. I think Donald Trump is at his best as the president when he takes his case directly to the people. He's the most brilliant communicator, most natural connector. I've ever seen. And so the more he can do that and get out of Washington and take his case right to the people, I think the best it is. But it'll be a national event too. People will see it on the TV live and in person.
Kelly, will you stick around?
Yes, of
for
course.
a few more minutes after this break? We want to talk to you, continue our conversation with you.
More pizza?
When you have a digital notebook to capture investing,
President Trump has to provide the American people, not just the Intelligence Committee, but the American people with evidence that his predecessor, former President of the United States, was guilty of breaking the law because our Director of National Intelligence, General Clapper, testified that there was absolutely no truth to that allegation. So I think the President has one of two choices, either retract or to provide the information that the American people deserve, because if his predecessor violated the law, President Obama violated the law, we've got a serious issue here, to say the least.
All right, we have Kellyanne Conway, advisor to the president, on the Curvy Couch with us. We want to get your response to that. He's saying either prove it or drop the accusations.
So what I was just tweeting out is that we're very happy that the House and Senate Intelligence Committees have agreed to add this piece of the investigation to their existing attenuated, unproven investigation about Russia and the campaign. And we will comment further after those findings are made clear. I also would note on a different program yesterday that Congressman Adam Schiff of California, a Democrat often on TV.
The fact that at least Michael Flynn was wiretapped. I mean, the New York Times said he was wiretapped. That's how they got his end of where he was talking to the Russian people.
And you know what this is about? The president has made very clear that he's incredibly concerned about these leaks from the intelligence and security communities. They're coming from somewhere where you have a readout of his private calls with other heads of states, where you have that particular incident that you've mentioned, Steve. So we know this happens. As goes Trump Tower, though, we'll see where these investigations lead.
So is the president disappointed in the past president? And he thought it was going to be a good transition. Now it looks as though, from what he tweeted out last Saturday, saying that he tapped my lines, to he believes that Obamacare was timed to blow up in 2017. Does he have a new view of the past of his predecessor?
Well, we were very pleased to receive so much public help from President Obama and some of his senior advisors, meaning they were out there saying we want a smooth transition. That's what democracies need, a smooth transition in power. But now it does seem that some of President Obama's former staffers, or perhaps his supporters, are out there organizing against this president's agenda, and perhaps, you know, going out and making statements that aren't particularly helpful or true to that peaceful transition of power.
Sure.
So,
and what about the people who are embedded in government?
well,
who
that's
have
the biggest
burrowed
problem
in?
of all. You've got folks there that, you know, we saw the New York
State
Times
Department,
article.
Department of Justice.
That's right. You've got, and this is serious. This is where the alleged leaks are. In other words, you've got people in there who aren't supporting this president and his agenda.
Right.
And I would just point out, the day after his masterful joint session address to Congress, which was lauded across the aisle, the New York Times ran an article that said the Obama administration was in a rush to preserve and sprinkle around the government intelligence information. They weren't expecting Donald Trump to be the president, and so they were in this rush to do that. Why would you do that if it wasn't to hurt?
Are you confident you can find the leak?
Well, I'm confident that the president is very focused on this, because he's absolutely correct, Ainsley, that we can't have intelligence and national security leaks in a way. This is not a partisan issue. This imperils our national security. It's serious stuff.
Right. 500 positions now, no nominees for. Is that going to change? Is there a pathway in the administration to get these nominees out there?
Yes, our Office of Personnel is very busy at all times. And the fact is, we've got many qualified men and women who are applying for these positions. The Democrats held up our cabinet nominees for so long. We still don't have them all confirmed. I mean, I think that the fact that the president was able to get so much done in the first 53 days with so many
Sure.
pieces of it, lacking a cabinet secretary in that particular department or agency, is that much more remarkable. But they've completely broken all records in terms of the obstruction and the resistance to just simple confirmation hearings of the cabinet nominees. So that has to stop.
All right, Kellyanne Conway, you got to catch a flight and go back to work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good to see
Thanks,
you.
Kellyanne.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, coming up straight ahead, something fun. It's March Madness, and what better way to fill out your bracket than with college basketball icon Dick Vitale. Finally, he's in an upbeat mood. Dickie V here to compete against us, and how you can compete against us. Find out in a moment.
It's the bracket, baby.
You were made to move, to progress.
March Madness is here. I'm sure you know that already, which means it's officially time to
Brian
start
is going
filling
mad.
out your bracket.
Here to give us some advice is college basketball icon Dick Vitale. Dad, I hope you're watching. One of Dad's favorite coaches is here. Yeah, nice to have you here at Fox.
I heard your father's a big basketball guy.
He is,
Coach?
and he loves you. Yes, sir. Y'all make a big difference in the
Real
lives
quick,
of
the
others.
headlines are who didn't make it that deserved to, who's in that you're shocked.
Put me on the spot already early in the morning, but I'll tell you this. I thought Syracuse should have been in.
Absolutely.
I think the committee did a great job, basically. You could have definitely seen that they weren't deserving to get it. They lost 3 times to very mediocre teams. But I look at the fact they beat 3 top 10 teams. Duke. And I thought, yeah, they beat Duke. I did that game. I know you're eating your heart out. I know you're a Syracuse guy, but you're not eating your heart out as much as Jimmy Boeheim is.
That's right, the coach of the team.
All right, so I understand we're going to fill out brackets. Coach, we need you to help us. You're going to do yours over there. We're going to do ours over here.
Right.
Should we choose based on who the mascot is, if they have good Greek life, if they have pretty colors?
Well, I will just tell you simply this. My daughter was in a pool one time, and she called me up and said, Dad, they told me not to use you to help me. Could you help me? And she called me back after. She said, I finished last.
All right, so Dick, there's a method to this, but you know quality basketball. So a computer fills up to here. First off,
Allstate did that.
You fill out, bring me to the Final Four, right on your side. We're going to combine and compete against Dick Vitale.
This is what you do. You choose between Kansas and Iowa State.
Kansas and Iowa State.
You got to do it yourself.
You got to do it yourself.
Okay, what are their colors?
Well, you just tried to
What are their mascots?
Rock, chalk,
I'll do
J-Ball.
Kansas because Steve's from that area.
That is not a solid theory.
I mean, watch. I'll probably beat you. Oregon and Louisville because they have a great horse derby.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.
Horse derby.
Okay.
North Carolina,
Carolina Butler. No!
Kansas. All right. Okay, fine.
Excuse me.
All right. Excuse me. Here's North Carolina. You know that, right? And who's UCLA or Kentucky?
UCLA or Kentucky because they have a good basketball team. My dad loves them.
Big Blue.
Okay, then I'm going to go with North Carolina here because that's the other Carolina.
All right, here's what I'm going to do. Tell me what you think.
Wow, they're great shooters.
Duke is so hot right now.
Duke,
Gonzaga, first time ever #1, right?
Florida State.
And then Florida State. Okay.
Yeah, go with Florida State.
All right. And then we get to the Final Four.
I'm going
to say Duke's going to have an upset.
Really?
Gonzaga.
Okay.
Pretty good picks.
Right? What do you think?
That's a terrible pick. That's a terrible one.
Not bad.
All right.
I will do Duke. Let's do Duke against North Carolina.
Wow.
Is that good?
Wow.
Dickie D, is that good?
Tremendous.
Okay, what do you have?
Let me just tell you this. First of all, I got to tell you this. If you really want to find out what your picks, go to Allstate and you go to their bracket.com and you go to the Allstate Predictor. They have a tool now. You go to that tool and you simply can get all the probabilities. You find you find the crunches, all the numbers. You find everything
figure out how to do
possible.
it. All right,
Allstate
who's your pick?
Predictor.
Real quickly, who's your
My pick? Well, quick, you rush them out of here. I got Kansas, Louisville here, right?
No, we have 10 seconds, Coach. Who's your pick? Your final pick?
My final pick, I am going with the Tar Heels winning the national title.
Woo!
Great training leads to excellent customer service. That's the mission of Walmart Academy.
In a Pizza Hut uniform is racing across Midtown to bring us a pepperoni lovers big pie.
But at this hour, do you think it could be a private contractor? Because is it hard to get in uniform at this hour?
It is hard to get a pizza this hour, so occasionally we will bring in food. Last week we tried to order pizza because it was Staff Appreciation Day. I could not find a pizza place on Seamless, which is this food ordering service here in New York. I could not find a pizza place that was open. I'm like, this is the city that doesn't sleep. So I am so glad you have the tennis shoes.
I know. It's called the Pie Top. You're going to see the pizza.
The shoe. Where's the shoe?
Right. Instead of the high top,
we
it's
put
called
it
the
over
Pie
there
Top.
just so that the crew wouldn't order
I think you should wear them for the
pie.
rest of the show, too, Brian.
All right.
Just saying.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about this. Friday night, the Attorney General for the United States, Jeff Sessions, fired all of the remaining U.S. attorneys across the country. I say all of the remaining.
He didn't really fire. He asked for resignations. 46 resignations.
Ultimately, they got rid of all of them. I said there are only 46 left. That's because out of the close to 100, half of them already knew with the new administration, you know what, our time is limited, let's find new jobs. Right. So there were only about 50 left, and apparently Brett Barrera, the U.S. Attorney for Southern District of New York City, didn't want to resign, and so got fired.
Yeah, so he said, well, Donald Trump already told me I can stay. So the next day, they made it clear he got a call, he was out, and they tweeted out how great how appreciative he was having his job and what he's done. Now, he's accomplished a lot. He's a high-profile guy. Remember, Rudy Giuliani really got his name that way. Remember, Governor Chris Christie made his name as a U.S. attorney over in New Jersey. So a lot of people think he's going into politics. Bottom line, he didn't want to back down because he's in the middle multiple investigations, one on our terrible Mayor de Blasio. The other one, he got rid of Sheldon Silver, a Democrat who's as corrupt as the day is long, and the Republican, too. We put them both in jail. One's heading to jail, the other one's going to jail. So they pointed out his successes, but bottom line is he's a Democrat. He worked for Senator Schumer, and he also donated to President Obama. So that makes, if you're looking to set up loyalists, and you've been stabbed in the back already by multiple people in the previous administration as you go to take over, it's only logical that the President of the United States drains the swamp.
If you watch the mainstream media, they're all saying, you know, this was done so abruptly. Well, guess what? Every other administration has done this too. They've all wiped out whoever is supporting them because you have your little family and you want people that work for you to be loyal. It makes sense, right? You know when you're getting one of these positions that you're probably going to lose the job if someone from the opposing party is elected. Right. Bill Clinton, he let go of 90 individuals, 90 people, including Jeff Sessions, and